Hitler lived.
What a great movie that would be. Don't you think?
Here we go back to everybody's favorite villain, the Nazis. So when they turn up at the center of a conspiracy, that's a Bafo conspiracy.
The official version of the story is that as the Russians advanced through Berlin, Hitler, knowing the game was up, committed suicide, having ordered his minions to then burn his body.
Outside Hitler's air raid shelter was the scene of the supposed burning of the bodies of the Führer and Eva Braun, an unconfirmed story with many variations.
The evidence for Hitler's death was rather shaky. Russians claim that they had evidence and dental records and things like that. Many people, didn't necessarily believe it.
With the Russians closing in, how could the world's most infamous man possibly escape justice?
Incredibly, the SS had an entire airport full of captured Allied planes of every sort. And, they could have flown high Nazi officers, including Hitler, out of Germany on an American or British plane.
Even if he could get out of Germany, where on earth could Hitler go to avoid being found?
It's well known that many former Nazis escaped to Argentina, particularly the southern and western Patagonia region is a huge, vast, isolated area where all kinds of things could happen, and entire battalions of German soldiers could have disappeared in Argentina, and in fact the British and Americans suspected exactly that.
So if the world's most evil man did find somewhere to hide, what's he been doing with himself all this time?
You even have fantasy scenarios of Hitler being cloned in South America and a whole army of cloned Hitlers. This was the Boys Brazil scenario.
Crazy enough for you? What about this? Can you see what it is yet? That's not a German helmet, it's a flying saucer.
There's a theory that they rebuilt Berlin, or a facsimile of Berlin at the South Pole, and that it's a giant flying saucer base, and that the Nazis have been launching from there for ages.
Yes, you heard right. It's the perfect combo for conspiracy theorists. Nazi flying saucers at the ends of the earth.
Gathered at Pacific and Atlantic ports.
Meet Admiral Robert Byrd, world-renowned American explorer. The story goes that in 1947, Byrd was flying over Antarctica when his plane was approached by flying saucers with familiar markings on their wings. My God, off our port and starboard wing are strange types of aircraft. They're closing rapidly alongside. These extracts are from a verbatim transcript we found. Well, actually, we found it on the internet. They're close enough now. I can see the markings. It's a type of swastika. Admiral Byrd said he was forced to land, and then it all gets a bit confusing. Suffice to say that when Byrd returned to America and started talking about his experiences, the call soon went up. Quick, nurse, the screens.
In fact, Byrd spent the latter years of his life in a mental hospital, perhaps put there by the military just to keep him from talking too much.
Possibly, or perhaps it was because he was barking mad. Maybe you don't buy into the notion of lots of little Hitler clones or Nazi flying saucers, but can you ignore the millions of apparently sane people who are convinced that alien abductions are happening all the time? And they're getting help from our government.
Some of the theories go even further, and they claim that these treaties allow for the United States government to get specific, scientific information that allows for technological marvels that, of course, they suppress and we don't get to see.
Some comments that you might have made toward the end of his program with Dreamland.
Yes.
Was there some kind of story that had to do with Roswell?
Absolutely. That was a pretty, that was just not too long ago, in fact. Living in Houston, and I also live in San Antonio, I'm just contracting with many hospices now. But the one in Houston really attracts because of MD Anderson Hospital, which is probably now the largest cancer institute in the world. So people from all over the place, all over the world come there to find the cure. And so I'm talking, different from everywhere, Saudi Arabia. So you'll have kings there and queens, down to the janitor. And so I frequently get to talk to people who have had really incredible lives. And one in particular was this gentleman who was from New Mexico. He was in his late 80s and lived there at the time during the Roswell crash, and actually was friends with Matt Brazel. And what he told me was sort of interesting, pretty incredible. And I'm going to put that story. I think he wanted me to write that story, and I'm going to put that story in my second book. But what I can tell you that he did tell me, and this man did see the angels at the end and so forth, but he needed a lot of reassurance from them because of what had happened at Roswell. He was that July, and what was it, July in 47, July 4th or so, that evening, he did corroborate there was a storm, and the next day his friend Matt Brazel did what we heard, but he did go and talk to other friends. And he spoke to him, and he invited him over. He says, "You've got to come see this stuff." And so he did, and it was strewn all over. There were a lot of pieces, but he said there was also parts of a craft, not the second craft, but there were still parts of a major craft in that original debris site. And in that craft, they saw, George, and this is interesting, a German swastika, the German sign.
Isn't that interesting?
Okay, and now you tell me, so this guy, this gentleman, and his wife corroborated that as well. And so they, when the soldiers all came in and started talking and telling everybody to be quiet, that they told Matt Brazel that he didn't see that this was a German vehicle or craft.
That was a couple of years after the war ended, though.
Absolutely, and which is what was even more important, that they kept it quiet. Can you imagine that if there was a German, we know that the Germans, I had physics background as a physicist. We knew that we're working on anti-gravity and these objects, and apparently these Foo Fighters were really that they were seen during World War II. I don't know if there was a bunch of them, but we believe now, as scientists, that it was Hitler and these scientists had developed these crafts. And we know the names of them were the Hanibu 1 and the Hanibu 2. You can actually, it's all over the internet. You can actually find all the information about that. And so where did these scientists go after the war? They left and worked with the United States because they weren't going to work. Well, they were going to probably be killed by Russia.
Right. Well, a few went to Russia. They got taken, didn't they?
Yeah, but they were going to kill them because they had killed so many of their people. And Hitler was just horrific to what he did to the Russian people. So apparently, see, this gentleman that I took care of did become a physicist. He did work. He did do some work there in New Mexico. Never really told me where. We really didn't get around to it. He just really started getting pretty sick pretty fast. But I got the meat of it, and that was that the scientists that he did speak to were already speaking with the United States probably a year before the war ended, knowing that the war was going to end. They were looking for asylum. They didn't want to be killed by the Russians.
Right.
So where did he go? Now